In the beginning of the film, a racer leads a gang driving 3 black bikes who hijack a shipment of electronics from a running truck. Brian O'Connor is an undercover police officer, driving supercars and trying to join Dominic Toretto's Vin gang, who are suspects in the robberies. He first goes to Dominic's cafe, where he makes conversation with Dominic's younger sister, Mia, and tries to meet with the gang by selling performance equipment. Vince is jealous, and a fight started. His girlfriend Letty appeals Dom to break it up, who does so, threats Brian to get fired. That night, all racers meets for street racing. Brian meet Hector, and they wait for Dom. Brian offers his car in a bet, and Dom's show Jesse checks his car out. The audience line the streets, lighting the way. Brian and Dom race with Johnny Tran and Edwin. Dom wins, showing Brian higher driving and timing. The racers pick up a police alert on the scanner, and everyone flees. Dom parks his car and flees on foot, and Brian helps him to escape. Dom has researched Brian, but as they talking, they are surrounded by Chinese bikers, who escort them to an empty lot. The leader of this gang, Johnny Tran, admires Brian's car and refers to a race in the desert next month. He and his goons shoot up Brian's car, which explodes. Back at Dom's house, a party is in progress. Dom shouts at his gang, saying Brian was the only one to help him. Vince is upset at the thought of it that Brian is back, and Mia breaks up with him. The next day Brian goes at a police safe house where his boss, Sergeant Tanner, briefs Brian. Truck drivers are getting nervous about the robberies, now the FBI are involved. They keep hearing about modified black bike in the robberies. Later that day, Brian brings Dom an unmake super powerful engine, and starts working in Dom's garage. Vince continues to be angry with Dom's friendship with Brian, and Mia teases him. The next day, Hector buys parts for a bike from Brian, and Brian gets doubtful. He futures into Hector's garage, but Vince and Dom have followed him. Brian convinces them he's spying on the competition for Race Wars next month. Vince is suspicious, but Dom thinks it's a great idea, and they future into Tran's garage. Brian spots possible stolen goods. Tran and his mans arrive, and Dom, Brian and Vince watch as they torture local fenced about lifted engines. Brian tells the FBI, but wants to prevent them from going on the train until they have more evidence. His boss thinks he's too soft on Toretto, that Brian is going native. After that, the next day, Dom takes Brian into confidence and shows his supercharged 1970 Dodge Charger, one he never drives. Dom says it has so much power. Over dinner, Brian and Mia talk about Dom, then Mia shows her driving skills. At the same time, another robbery is contact, and Brian gets a call from his boss that they are coming in on Tran in the morning. The raid goes off with Brian wearing a hood, but Tran's gang gets free for a lack of evidence. The lifted goods were purchased. Sergeant Tanner cautions Brian about falling for Mia, and tells him Dominic is the next suspect. The next day, Brian and Dom take the rebuilt Supra for a spin, and smoke a Ferrari car. In the lunch, Brian asks to get in on Dom's next job, but Dom wants to see how Brian deals Race Wars first. In the middle of the desert, Race Wars begins. Letty wins the race, but Jesse loses his car to Tran. Tran accuses Dom as an informer as a result of the police raid on his place the day before, and they start fighting. That night, Mia is upset with Dom, who wants to going on another robbery. Brian confesses that he's a cop, and asks Mia to help him warn Dom about the truckers provide themselves and the FBI operations. Brian calls for a trace of Dom's phone. Letty is nervous about the upcoming job, but they go forward with it. At the climax, Dom and his gang wear their masks in cars and set out for another robbery. The robbery goes wrong when Vince jumps on the truck, but is shot at by the trucker. Letty crashes her car, and Leon rescues her. Brian comes on the scene and risks his life to save Vince as the trucker reloads his gun. Dom comes and hears Brian calling for a medical helicopter, introduced himself as a cop. Dom is shocked, but Vince is the first priority. After Vince is stabilized, Dom storms off with Mia following. Back at Dom's house, Brain faces Dom. Jesse returns, and Tran shoots him in a drive-by. Brian runs away, and Dom gets in the Charger to follow as well. Dom stops in front of one of the bike, sending the man into a field, and Brian shoots Tran. Brian sees Dom escape, and chasing the Supra. They race, and Dom's car destroys itself from the massive torque in the motor. They finish the race, but Dom hits a truck pulling out from a side street. The Charger fall off, and Dom is injured. As the police sirens are heard in the distance, Brian gives Dom his car and Dom runs away.